This video is for Ireen Nezhad, or more properly known as Ireen Nezhad, Nezhad, my cousin. As you have known Stephen, I'm using these videos as an open letter form to people that I have a message for. I didn't consider contacting you or having a video about you or sending you an open letter in this format up to now, but recently you emailed me something like reprimanding what I had said regarding another matter. So basically you poke your own nose in this matter. So now that you have opened up, now that you have shown you need to communicate, here's my communication to you. And the problems that you and your family caused me. And the reason I bring this up is because apparently you don't understand that you're not standing on higher moral ground. You're not standing on any ground that you can actually be proud of where you're standing and use your morality to judge me. You're not standing on higher moral ground. So how can you have such audacity to think that you are on higher moral ground and you can sit back and judge me? Here is how I know you're not standing on higher moral ground. I have to tell a bit of a backstory so other people also can understand what I'm talking about regarding you and your family. In Iran, there is a law that says if boys pass the age of 14, they cannot leave the country until they go to the military and do their 2-year mandatory military service. That's a law. So many families, especially at the time of war, those who can, or those who think they can, like my family, at the time of war, they send their sons early, out of the country early. They have to, if they don't want the son to go to war and die over some bullshit. And what happens is, so the son is sent out of the country at age 13, while he still can get a passport, can be issued a passport by the country of Iran. So was my case, my situation. But my family was not so well off to send me to another country with a student visa or with other kind of visas. And we had a neighbor in our street who had sent their son with a people smuggler to Canada. And he had reached Canada and he was happy there, and became first a refugee, then a resident, then a citizen of Canada. He was my age, he was my friend. and their family were neighbors. So my mother believed that's a good option. Therefore, at the age of 13, in the summer holidays, I went to Turkey, which is a neighbor of Iran, neighboring country, with my mother, legally. It was the two of us. My father didn't participate. He just drove us to the border. And from the border, we just got onto a bus, and me and my mother traveled to Turkey. From there, once there, we went and saw our neighbor's family, which by then all of them had moved to Turkey because they were all planning on going to Canada one by one with the same people smuggler, following the same route. Once there, it cost my family $3,000 to hook up with this people smuggler. And the plan was he would take $3,000, he would get me a visa to Yugoslavia on my Iranian passport, with my Iranian passport. I would go to Yugoslavia, and from there, later he would send a forged Turkish passport for me. And from there, I would travel to Canada under assumed identity of a Turkish boy. And once I reach Canada, I throw away the passport and seek asylum in Canada. Millions of Iranians up to now, millions of Iranians have gone through this route and have been successful. Canada hasn't rejected anybody, doesn't reject anybody who comes in this way. And they're all given asylum, then residentship, then citizenship. What happened in my case is after a few months in Turkey with my mother, I was sent alone with a couple of other Iranians who were going the same route through the same smuggler, but they were all older than me. They were all of them were over 18 years old, and I was the only 13-year-old. So at the age of 13, I am sent by myself with train from Turkey to Yugoslavia, and once I reached there, apparently a couple of weeks before it, some Iranians who had gone through the same route, who had tried to go through the same route, have been caught by the Bulgarian airport, and the smuggler that I was working, that had to send me, was holding back for a while and told us to hold back, and he didn't send our forged Turkish passports until further notice, until things calm down. So I spent 3 months in Yugoslavia with, as I said, different Iranian guys older than me, all over 18, 20, 25, 30, 40, whatever. Many ages, many older people, trying to navigate my way with living side by side with these strangers. The kind of strangers that they weren't even permanent. We were changing. We had to change. We had to keep changing our cities. From this city to that city, we couldn't stay in the same city for too long, in the same hotel for too long, because it would arouse suspicion. Because we were all supposedly tourists with Iranian passports who are living in Yugoslavia as tourists. So we couldn't stay in the same place for too long. And many of these boys would become friends with each other and they would stay together. But I, being a 13-year-old, would go wherever the people smuggler would tell me. So I had to change my group, the group of the boys, men that I was with, many times, 3 or 4 times. So under these conditions, and it took 3 months that I was in Yugoslavia. I was there for 3 months waiting until the passports are ready and we can get on our way, until the people smuggler gives the okay, sends me a passport so I can get on to Canada. Meanwhile, and this is where your family comes in, apparently your father gets in touch with my father and things come up and he says, oh, why don't you send your son to United States legally with a student visa? Now my father later on told me that he did tell your father that he's not that well off financially, so he cannot get it, he cannot pay, or this is what he told me. He might be lying. As I've come to know, my father's side of the family is lies and cheats often. It's a matter of fact thing for my father's side of the family, cheating and lying. Anyway, my uncle's, your father, manager, apparently tells my father that that doesn't matter, it's okay. I send my wife out there to pick up your son, get him a student visa and bring him here legally. So they do so. Your mother comes to Yugoslavia and I meet her in Zagreb. With the attitude of your mother and the way she was talking to me and she was treating me, I knew right off the bat that she really doesn't like this situation. So within the next 48 hours that we telephone my parents in Iran, and I'm talking to my mother. I keep telling her that I don't want to go with this lady. I never seen this lady, but I just don't want to go with this lady because I knew I was witnessing the way she was treating me. She was talking to me, she was behaving towards me. It wasn't oh, you poor boy, come with me, welcome. None of that. Your mother right off the bat behaved like a stepmother would, a really nasty stepmother. So I saw that. I begged my parents allow me to stay in Yugoslavia until my papers are ready and I can go to Canada the way we had planned. But they didn't go for it, and they said no, stay, go with this woman. It's all been worked out by your father and your uncle. So I did so. The rest, more or less, is clear. Got a visa, student visa, came to United States. What happened next is what what makes it clear that your family is not in any moral standing to be proud of. I spent 3 years in your house, 1 year in your house. Actually, it was 1 year in your house, and then 2 years I was sent to a boarding school, so I wouldn't be in your house. The first year that I was in your house, I was forced to spend 5 days in your house and 2 days in my other uncle's house, Iraj's house. Now here is a 13-year-old boy who doesn't have 4 square feet to call his own, to feel permanence, to feel safe. He's being passed back and forth like a ping pong ball between the two uncles, 5 days here, 2 days there, 5 days here, 2 days there, 9 months straight. On top of all this, the way I as a 13-year-old boy was treated in your household, the way your mother basically, it was clear from the start that your family didn't care for me to stay there. They didn't want my stay in your house. And the question is, if you didn't want this motherfucker to stay in your house, why did you invite him? Why did you go after him? Why did you bring him? Did you think once you bring him, he's gonna go away? Or somebody else is going to take care of him? On top of all this, it was a question of money. Apparently the most important thing, which I was left out of the picture. Nobody actually ever told me that your father is not paying us. That's why we are treating you like shit. Nobody actually told me this. It was so bad that your father apparently, years later I came to understand that your father was asking my father for my expenses at least once every 2 months or 3 months. They have had a long discussion, him demanding money and my father keep shouldering off his responsibilities. As you can see, my father, he likes pussy. He likes my sister because she's got a pussy. He's weak in that sense. He likes pussy. And being such a man, being so weak with regards to pussy, that means that if you have any sons, as my father did, the sons are going to be neglected. Because my father loves and adores and has a weak spot in his mind regarding pussy. And he absolutely hated other males. And that's why me and my brother were neglected all these years. Later I found out that instead of paying your father my expenses, he actually told your father to use me around the house as a houseboy, as a servant. He kept saying, your father apparently kept saying, hey, this is the expenses, this is food, this is clothing, this is schooling, these are books. And apparently during the 3-year period, my father didn't send a single dollar for my expenses to your father. Not a single dollar, apparently. And who was suffering because of this because of this neglect by my father? Who was suffering? Me. Because on one hand, not only I was considered as a house servant, as somebody who has to do stuff around your house because nobody's paying for his living expenses, but also at the same time, your parents want to get rid of me. Your family wanted to get rid of me, and you put me through hell. Different kinds of hell. From the fact that your father forced me to ask permission every time I want to take a shower, to the fact that I was basically sent to a room that your family has allocated me for 14 hours a day when I was in your house. Even when I was sent to the boarding school, whenever I had to return to your house because it was holiday and the school was closed, and they would send all the students back home to wherever the hell they came from. I was sent to your house, not through my choice, but because school was closing during the holidays, during Christmas holidays. Still, even during those holidays, your family forced me to go to that room that you have allocated me and spend 14 hours a day there. Considering that sending a child to his room to sit by himself and watch the ceiling is a form of punishment in the United States. And if you do that to a child who hasn't committed any mistakes or anything wrong, that's considered child abuse. When you punish a child with no reason, that's considered child abuse. So your father basically was committing child abuse for 2 years, 3 years of my life. The rule that your mother has set forth for me was that because your family wants their privacy, I should not be in the living room or downstairs at all, in the kitchen or living room or anywhere downstairs, after 6 o'clock. After the family gets together, I should pack my bag up, pack myself up, and go to the room upstairs and stay away because the family needs their privacy. Your family did this for 3 years to me. 3 years. This was your family's way of trying to get rid of me, to make life so miserable for the motherfucker until he surrenders. He throws down the towel and says, okay, I surrender, I want to get out of this hellhole. But the reality is I never surrendered. I knew the hellhole I had run away from, Iran. I remembered the hellhole, Iran. I also remembered my sister, who was another hell to deal with, as you can see, as you have noticed recently. So if your family thought by neglecting me or abusing me in this way, they're going to push me out of your household, or they're going to force me to ask to leave, no. Unfortunately, I have been mistreated much worse. I had been neglected and mistreated much worse in my own family. So for 3 years, I didn't give up. I didn't throw in the towel. I didn't ask to be sent back. For 3 years, your father was keep asking me from my father for money. And let's make sure we understand what kind of money we are talking about. For 3 years, my father didn't send your father or Iraj, my other uncle, a single dollar. And the 3 years cost of my life in total apparently was $20,000. Let's say $21,000. That's the amount my father owed your father and Iraj. That makes it $7,000 a year. That makes it about $600 a month. My expenses, the expenses of a 13-year-old refugee boy who had come from a hellhole like Iran, and he wasn't just any refugee, he was your cousin, your father's nephew. He was also a family. My expenses was $600 a month that was divided between two doctors who were making each between $300,000 and $400,000 a year. Two professional doctors who were specialists, both internal medicine, as I believe. One internal, one in the... Both professional, both specialists, both making between $300,000 to $400,000 a year. And between the two of them, they had to take care of, let's say my father was an asshole, who is an asshole, who didn't feel responsible paying for his children, his own children. As the case is, he sent my brother out to beg for his education at age 18, to beg money for his education at age 18. And as it has come to, as I explained, he had sent me to be a servant to pay for my expenses at age 13. So he has sent one of his sons to beg at 18, beg for his survival, and he has sent another son to serve for his survival at age 13. So here is an asshole of a father who doesn't understand the meaning of responsibility, not even towards his own family. That aside, he's an asshole. He was an asshole. We all know. We all knew. He likes pussy. He thinks all his work, all these years that he has done, he fed my sister and he accumulated to now feed his children, her children. He's got some mental issues. That's beside the point. Some psychological issues. That's beside the point. The point right now is your family and responsibility of your family, who volunteered to take a 13-year-old refugee boy who was your cousin to United States. Volunteered. Nobody forced them, nobody twisted your father's arm, nobody twisted your mother's arm to do this. I either would have found a way to go to Canada as the way I was going, or I would have returned to Iran. Either scenario would have been much better than what your family caused me. Let me elaborate. Why both scenarios, me reaching to Canada or me going back to Iran, would have been from Yugoslavia, would have been much better than me, what happened and I found my way into your house. Beside the abuse that I took in your house, one, because you didn't want me there, two, because my father wasn't paying for my expenses, we have such a thing as called cultural shock. You look it up on Google, Wikipedia, you will find it. I didn't know it exists, but I was having such a difficult time adjusting, both in the United States and when I was sent back to Iran, that I had to investigate. All these years I've been trying to investigate. What went wrong, why it went wrong, and am I to blame for things that went wrong? We have such a thing called cultural shock. That's when you take a young individual who hasn't got his bearings right in life yet. That's usually the individuals in the teen years. You take him from one culture and you throw him into a different culture, a totally different culture in another part of the world. What happens is that individual goes through a cultural shock. It takes years for the person to adjust, because your value system is something that takes years for you to achieve, your value system. And each culture in each part of this world has their own value system. And many people go through this once they change country. And the very young ones, they don't have any issues because they still don't have any value system. People who are older than 18, older than 20, they have an easier time because they already have their value system. Once they move into a new country, they usually don't adapt the new value system. They don't need to be accepted. They do their little thing, their own thing. They go start a business or go to a university, but they really don't need to adapt a new. They don't feel the need to adapt a new value system. But people within the teen years have the most difficult time once they move into a new country, a new culture, because they are within teen years. They feel the need to adapt because they want to be accepted within their society, their new society. So they have to adapt. They feel the need to adapt. And because their value system is not complete already, it's half-ass value system. So they move into a new place. They decide, okay, I changed my value system. Now this used to be bad, this used to be good. Now it's the opposite. This is good, that is bad. It's as simple as that. So once you change somebody's place in the world, you relocate somebody within the teen years, the person is going to have a very difficult time. But once you will actually torture him if you relocate him back to the place he was. You're actually torturing him, because here the guy was adapting and reevaluating his value system and trying to readjust to the new system. 3 years that I spent in the United States, and then you send him back to Iran. Now he's back to the old system, the old values. This is not gonna come out right. This story is not gonna come out right. His story is not gonna come out right. In fact, this back and forth business is such a difficult procedure that quite a few people, a few kids who go through this bullshit that I went through, actually commit suicide. One of them was a close friend of mine, returned from abroad back to Iran, more or less under similar circumstances as me. He killed himself when he was 19, 18. On top of all this, on top of the cultural shock, what you go through is an academic shock. When somebody is sent to a country from Iran, a country like Iran, to a country like United States, the educational system in the United States is so weak that somebody coming from Iran is actually finds it very easy here. Finds whatever he's studying is the same as whatever he was studying like 3 years ago in Iran. So an 8th grade student here in the United States studies what a 5th grade student studies in Iran. So once I got here, things are, at least academically, was a little easy. But what happens is that if you take this child and send him the other way, things become extremely difficult. Here's what happened to me. 3 years that I spent in the United States, although I kept up with my class in the United States, but once I was sent back to Iran, I had lost those 3 years. 3 years of where my classmates in Iran had studied same hard subjects and have gone up. Now I'm back in Iran. I don't want to go in the same classroom with kids who are 3 years younger than me. That's just not right. So I did the thing that I thought I should be doing, next best thing. Very enthusiastically and with a lot of hard work, I went and skipped 2 grades. Skipped 2 grades. Within a matter of 4 months, I went and studied, and last time, because in Iran they don't accept American degrees, so once I took them the American paperwork that I've studied, what was it, 8th and 9th grade in the United States and 10th grade, and they said, no, we don't accept this. This is bullshit. And they know why. We all know why, because it's quite simple here, the educational system. So I studied over 4 months. I skipped the last papers that I had from Iranian educational system was for 7th grade. 7th grade. So I skipped over 8. I had the last papers I had was for 6th grade. So I skipped over 7th and 8th grade, and I studied for 9th grade. I studied the same material that they give out for 9th grade exam. Within 4 months, I passed, and I sat on 9th grade, 10th grade. I sat on 10th grade. Grade 10, after missing 3 years of education in Iran, I studied 9th grade and passed the exam, and I sat on 10th grade. You can say how difficult can an educational system be if you can study it like that and jump 2 grades. Well, you can if you memorize everything. I memorized all the mathematic problems and their solution. I memorized physics problems and their solution, trigonometry problems and their solution. I memorized the whole fucking thing. Everything. The problem with memorizing is that you really don't understand it. You're memorizing the damn thing without any understanding of it. I didn't have any. There was no good solution to this. I didn't want to go sit back 3 years, lose 3 years of education, and sit in the same classroom with people 3 years younger than me. But now that I was at the grade that I should be, I don't know jack shit, because I really didn't learn anything. I memorized everything and gave an exam for it. So the hell I went through. Past couple of years, and then was held back for 1 year because it was hell. Didn't understand anything. I had to memorize everything, most things. Took me a long time to learn anything. Algebra, trigonometry, physics. These are the subjects that if you don't understand them, by memorizing them, you're going to have a hell of a time. My point is this, Mr. Steven. I had the cultural shock when I came to United States, and then I had the cultural shock and an academic shock when I went back to Iran. More importantly, academic shock. And all of this because 2 doctors in the United States who together, 2 uncles I have in the United States whom together were making over $500,000 a year, couldn't come up with $600 a month between them. Let me further calculate for you. $600 a month means $300 each. 2 doctors who had to come up with $300 a month each. Let's say out of their own pocket. Let's say charity. Let's say this motherfucker has come from a hellhole, shithole country like Iran to United States as a refugee, and he's 13 years old. So we, 2 brothers, we are his uncles, we are doctors, together we are making over $500,000 a year. We have to come up with $300 each a month. Your father's visits, patients who came to your father paid about on average $70 per visit. $300 a month for your father, calculating, comes down to basically 5 patients a month. Each patient taking 20 minutes of your father's time. That is about 2 hours. Your father could have considered 2 hours of his not such a hard labor as a doctor, 2 hours of his labor a month for charity. He could have set aside 2 hours of labor a month for charity. He could have considered, hey, it's a charity. Iraj, same thing, 2 hours a month. This is not a freeloader. This is not a guy who can go out and work and doesn't. This is a fucking 13-year-old refugee boy who cannot work, who was working whenever he could in the summertime, babysitting, cutting grass, whatever I was told I would do. However I could find a job, I would do. Those were the summers that your family didn't. That was actually the first summer. The second summer you didn't want me at your home. So for 3 months of summer, after coming from a boarding school I was staying in for 9 months, then your mother sent me to a 3 months of summer camp so that you wouldn't have to see me during those 3 months either. So I was one of like I was one of 3 guys who were there for 3 months of summer camp. It was a Boy Scout camp. Every other kid in that camp would come and go 1 week, 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks at a time, and they would go back to their families. Me and 2 other guys were the only people who were in that camp for 3 months straight, living in a tent. Living in tents for 3 months. Living in tents for 3 months at the age of 14. Your mother just came, dropped me off with a bag of some underwears and socks, and have a nice day. She left for 3 months. I was living in a camp, in Boy Scouts camp. I was living in a tent for 3 months with other kids, but they all would come and go. It's a 1 month, 1 week, 2 weeks of camping. I was there for fucking 3 months. There were 2 other kids like me. Who knows what the hell they were going through with their family. Probably orphans. So here's the thing, Steven. Your father, my other uncle Iraj, they had to come up $300 each to have this refugee boy taken care of. But they didn't feel responsible. They said, fuck him. Fuck him. Let him go back to Iran and drop dead. Fuck him. Considering the kind of money that they made as specialists, doctors in United States, at least $300,000-$400,000 a year each. And on top of that, the fact that they want to have, especially your family, want to have their privacy. They don't want somebody else in their house. Even I was okay with that boarding school. Still. And the way you sent me back, telling me that, yeah, we have talked to your father and everything is okay, and we have agreed to send you back. Went back to Iran and found out that you lied. Your family lied to me, and lied to a fucking 14-year-old boy, a 15-year-old boy. You've lied, just trying to pack him up and send him back to the hellhole he came from by lying. Oh yeah, we talk, you're going back. Your father says, yeah, send him back. And went back to Iran, and my father said, yeah, he didn't tell me right away because he was a bigger asshole than everybody else. But years later I found out that yes, once out of frustration, after so many times your father calling him and demanding money for my existence, and him coming up with excuses that why he cannot pay for his own fucking son. That's $600 a month. Why he couldn't pay the expenses of his 13-year-old son, his 14-year-old son. After one of these exchanges, apparently my father gets frustrated and says, okay, you know what, send him back. Out of anger and frustration. That piece of shit, my father directs your father to send me back out of anger and frustration. Once, apparently. And your father grabs onto that and says, okay, I got the answer I was looking for. I guess the motherfucker is going back. You see, Steven, knowing all of this, and you motherfucker, you were the one who were present and helped me pack to send me back to Iran. You motherfucker. Ireen Nezhad, Ireen Nezhad, Steven Farokh Nejad, whatever the fuck you're calling yourself nowadays. You helped me pack. You were the one who actually lied to me that yeah, everything is in order and your father knows, and yeah, you don't want to call him right now. You gave me some number, said here's, call this number, and nobody answered on Iranian side, and he said yeah, don't worry, you go get on the plane and we call them and let them know that you're coming. I reached Tehran and I had to catch a cab to go home after not being in Iran for 3 years, going home after 3 years, and my family, that fucking family that I had back in Iran, none of them knew I was coming. You didn't call. Neither did your father, neither did your mother. I was thrown away like a piece of garbage. Through no fault of my own. I was doing whatever you told, your parents told me, cut the grass, wash the dishes, vacuumed here, vacuumed there. I did whatever the fuck your family told me. As a houseboy. Stay in your room for 14 hours a day from 6 in the afternoon, from 5 in the afternoon till 8 o'clock in the morning. Stay in your room. And after that, even during the day, why do you need to be in the hall? Why do you need to be in the kitchen? Don't be around us. We want our privacy. You go to your room, stay in your room, we call you for food, you come downstairs, you eat your fucking food, and you get the fuck back to your room. And when you want to take a shower, you come and ask permission. The rest of the time, you're either outside, this is what your mother told me. The rest of the time, you're either outside of my house, go outside, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Go walk, go ride a bicycle, go do whatever the fuck you want to do. Just don't be in my house. Don't be around me and my family. How can I live in the fucking house when I'm told don't be around me and my family? How can somebody live in a house where a family is living in and not be around them? Go outside of our home, and when you're inside, you go to that room that we gave you, and you live and stay in there until we call you for food. You come downstairs, you eat your food, and get the fuck back to the room and start just watch the ceiling. Never ask for anything. Ate what I was given, wore what I was given, did everything exactly as I was told. And you still managed to fuck me over and send me back to Iran. By bringing me to United States, you caused me cultural shock, and by sending me back to Iran, you caused a academic shock, which I never recovered from. Knowing all of this, do you actually think you're standing on higher moral ground to tell me what's right and what's wrong? Really? Really, Steven? You? From that fucking family? Who fucked me over the way you fucked me over? Find the audacity to turn around and tell me that, yeah, I think this is what you're doing wrong and that's what you're doing wrong? Are you fucking kidding me, you piece of shit? Mr. Ireen Nezhad. People around the world open their homes and open their wallets to totally strangers, strange refugees who are total strangers, just for the mere fact that they're refugees and they need help and they're coming from a shithole and they are looking for a better, more stable, more prosperous environment to grow in. People all over the world open their houses, open their hearts, open their wallets. People with much less means than your family. And you motherfuckers with all the money that you are making, your father was making and Iraj was making, two uncles, between the two of you, them motherfuckers, with all the money that they were making, taking care of one refugee boy, one 13-year-old refugee boy, who also happened to be their nephew, a family, was too difficult for two doctors who are making between them over $500,000 a year. No, my friend, this is called lack of responsibility. Just don't give a fuck. You don't give a fuck. Your father didn't give a fuck. Iraj didn't give a fuck. My father's side of the family just doesn't give a fuck, because responsibility hasn't been defined for you guys. Well, I guess responsibility was defined much better for your father than for my father, or even Iraj. As your father at least understood the meaning of taking care of his own family. That much he understood. It was much more advanced than my father, who didn't even understand what it means to take care of your own family. That's part of his responsibility. My father thought he was a king of his house. He does not have any responsibility, but he has rights, only rights. He has the right to pick and choose who he likes, who he wants to spend money on and give favors to, and who he doesn't. And if you're his favorite as the king, you get everything. And if you're not the favorite and he doesn't like you, you get nothing, because he's the king. He finds himself the king, not the responsible, but the boss. Yeah. Yeah. Your father at least took care of his own family. My father didn't understood even that much. Iraj, he was out of it either as well. Anyway, you don't stand on any moral ground, Steven. You're an asshole like your father, like your mother, like your sisters. Didn't want to, weren't able. Nobody can say you weren't able to take care of one fucking refugee boy from a shithole like Iran who had seeking refuge in your house. Not even he, not even I didn't even drop in your house by force. You volunteered. Your father, your mother volunteered to have me at your house. Volunteered, and you still managed to fuck it up. It's sort of like you volunteered to fuck somebody else's life up. Yeah, no. You're not standing in any higher moral ground. In fact, you're in a way below moral ground. You're in the bottom of the fucking well as far as morality is concerned. You and your whole fucking family. So next time, just shut the fuck up. Mind your own business. If I send a video out, if I send an email out, you want to read it, you want to watch it, watch it. You want to read it, read it. If you don't, just don't. But shut the fuck up. You don't stand on any moral ground to tell anybody anything.